This is Lesson 16, Part 3, and we will be continuing our work with dotted note values. In everyday life, we measure time or duration in seconds, minutes, and hours. In music, we measure time or duration in beats and subdivisions of those beats. Just like a second hand on a clock, a beat or pulse is recurring and predictable, and it is independent of anything else going on around it. The beat or pulse itself is not actually visible on the score. When we see note and rest values on a score, those represent the rhythm of the piece or song. So they tell us when to start and stop sounds or pitches, and when to start and stop silences or rest. Remember that the rhythm is absolutely dependent on a pulse to be realized. We're going to set our metronome at 80 beats per minute today. We're going to group our beats into fours and get that beat going in our hands as always. Today we're just going to practice saying pairs of half beat notes, so do, day, and we're going to say 8 of those pairs of half beat notes. 1, 2, ready, clap. 1, 2, ready, speak. Do day, 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 do day. We'll do that one more time. Ready, go. Do day, 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 do day. We're now going to slow our metronome down to 60 beats per minute, and we're going to practice saying our quarter beat notes in a steady stream. So these are our do, ta, de, tas, where each syllable represents just a quarter of a beat. That set, we're going to say it 8 times. Get this pulse going first. I always listen first, internalize that, and then try to get my clap going. 1, 2, ready, clap. 1, 2, ready, speak. Do-ta, data, 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 do-ta, data. One more time. Ready, go. Do-ta, data, 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 do-ta, data. We're going to keep that same pulse going and continue to group our beats into fours. Now we're going to say one set of do-ta data followed by one beat of rest. So while that rest is going, see if you can already be preparing yourself to repeat the next set of do-ta datas. We're going to repeat that pattern, a set of do-ta data followed by a one beat rest. We're going to do a total of 4 of those patterns. So 1, 2, ready, clap. 1, 2, ready, speak. Do-ta data, do-ta data, do-ta data, do-ta data. Good, we'll try that one more time. If you do find that challenging, don't worry. We're going to be doing this a lot. Ready, go. Do-ta data, do-ta data, do-ta data, do-ta data. We're going to increase our metronome speed to 80 beats per minute, grouping our beats into fours still. We're going to say a set of half beat notes, so a do day, followed by a one beat rest. And we're going to repeat that pattern for a total of 4 times. Here's our pulse. 1, 2, ready, clap. Try to keep the do day going, thinking ahead during the rest so you're prepared to come in. 1, 2, ready, speak. Do day, do day, do day, do day. Do that one more time. Ready, speak. Do day, do day, do day, do day. Remember that we can take any note value from our note value pyramid and we can alter it and lengthen it simply by adding a dot to it. So this would be a dotted whole note. So I've just added a dot to the right of the note head. A dot does not have value in and of itself. It will always be worth half of whatever note it's dotting. So a dotted whole note would be worth a whole note plus the dot's value, which would in this case be a half note. A dotted half note would be worth a half note plus the dot, and the dot will in this case be worth half of the half note, so a quarter note. A dot is worth half of whatever note it's dotting. This would be a dotted quarter note. So a dotted quarter note would be worth a quarter note plus half of the note it's dotting, so plus an eighth note, because an eighth note is worth half of the value of a quarter note. A dotted eighth note would be worth an eighth note plus half of its value to account for the dot, which would be a 16th note, and we'll stop there. Just like the note value pyramid had a rest value pyramid equivalent, the dotted notes we see here will have their rest equivalents. We can hold a pitch or a sound for the equivalent of a dotted whole note, or we can hold a rest or silence for the equivalent of a dotted whole rest. So a dotted whole rest would look like a heavy hat with a dot to the right of it. A dotted half rest would look like a light hat sitting on line 3 with a dot next to it. A dotted quarter rest would look like that Z with a swoop and a dot next to it. And a dotted eighth rest would look like a little swoopy 7 with a dot next to it. Continuing with Unit 2, which is our rhythm unit, Lesson 7, dots or dotted note values. We will again start working from where we left off. As rests can be dotted too, which is what we just discussed. So what we're going to do here is just again do the music math of this example. So first we look at the time signature. The 6 tells us there are 6 beats per measure. And the bottom number tells us, think of it as the denominator of a fraction, that an eighth note is our pulse note. It will be our 1 beat note. So we'll go over here to our note value pyramid and just assign 1 to our eighth notes and eighth rests, 2 beats to each quarter note, 4 beats to each half note, and 8 beats to each whole note and whole rest. So now let's return up here and just do the math. So we have 1 beat per eighth note. These are beamed together eighth notes, so it's 1 beat for each of those. And then we have a dotted quarter note. So we know the quarter note itself is worth 2 beats in 6/8 time, and the dot is worth half of that too, so 1. So altogether, we get a total of 6 beats in this measure. Perfect. Next measure, 1 beat for each eighth note again, and then again, you'll notice another dotted quarter note. So we have 2 beats for the quarter note and half of that for the dot, because a dot is worth half of whatever note it's dotting. So again, a total of 6 beats in this measure. All good. Then we have another dotted quarter note. So again, dotted quarter note gets 2. Its dot gets half of that, so 1. Same thing here, 2 plus 1. So altogether, total of 6 beats. Then we have another dotted quarter note. So again, 2 beats plus 1 beat for the dot. Then we have a dotted quarter rest. This is the same thing. It's just a silence instead of a pitch. So the quarter rest will be worth 2 beats. The dot following the quarter rest will be half the value of the quarter rest. So it'll just be 1 beat worth of silence. Altogether, again, I won't even write that in. So well, there we go. It's 6 beats total. Music math. Write the correct note in each blank space. All right, so we're just looking for equivalence on the two sides of this equation. Okay, so we have a whole note here, and then it's supposed to be equal to a dotted half note plus something. Okay, well, I know that 2 half notes would be equivalent to a whole note. So let's see how close we are to that. A dotted half note would be worth the equivalent of a half note plus a quarter note. So what am I missing to make this true? Well, I'm missing 1 quarter note. Next example, number 2. So we need a half note to be equal to a dotted quarter note and something else. Okay, 1 note value that would fill that in. Well, I know that a dotted quarter note is worth a quarter note plus half of that value, so plus an 1/8 note. So what am I missing to make this true? Well, I'm missing 1 more 1/8 note. Together, those 2 1/8 notes will then equal a quarter note, and the 2 quarter notes together will be a half note. Now I need a dotted quarter note to equal a quarter plus something. Well, this one is actually pretty easy because I know that whatever I'm looking for is going to need to be the equivalent of the dot. So what would that dot be worth? I'm going to attack it from this side this time. So we have a quarter note plus half of that. The dot is worth half of the quarter note, so an 1/8 note. So I know that must be the answer here. Another way of going about this would be to assign a note as the pulse note and just do it literally with math. So, meaning using numbers. So I could put a 1 right here, assign the quarter note as 1 beat, which would make the half note 2 beats, 4 beats for the whole note and whole rest, and then half a beat for the 1/8 note. So let's just literally do the math. So this would be worth 2 beats. Its dot is worth half of that, so plus 1. So this side is worth 3, okay? And now I can just do math here. 1 plus 1 plus I need 1 more beat, right? And I can just know this must be a quarter note because both sides need to equal 3. So that's another way of going about this. Depends what strategy you find most helpful. Let's try this same strategy for number 5. This time, I think I'm going to assign the 1/8 note as the pulse note because I see a lot of 1/8 notes. I think it might be easier. So I'm going to say 1 for an 1/8 note. Therefore, quarter notes must get 2 beats, half notes must get 4 beats, and whole notes must get 8 beats. So this quarter note is worth 2. Its dot would be worth 1 beat because it's half of a quarter note. So we have, again, total of 3 beats over here. 1 beat for this 1/8 note, 1 beat for this 1/8 note. I'm missing exactly 1 beat, so I know it must be an 1/8 note. Same strategy I'll use down here. Let's just stick with the same 1/8 note as our pulse note. So this whole note is actually going to be worth 8 beats. The dotted quarter note, the quarter note will be worth 2 plus half the value of the quarter note for the dot, so plus 1, plus another 1 for this 1/8 note. So far we're at 4. I need 1 note value worth 4 beats. I can look up there at my pyramid that I filled out, and I can know that this must be a half note.